kind of guy like Cronenberg too, like people like this or John Carpenter, who will have a real space in like film heaven in a way that they will be never forgotten. You know, they really put the stamp on an era because they stayed true to their style, their like a Tarantino too, right? So they will stick with the plan basically, you know, and they make their stuff in a way nobody else would do it, you know, and that I totally admire. And he did films like Wild at Heart, Twin Peaks, like who I love, you know, Mulholland Drive. I hated when I watched it first. Now I love it. There are also like really movies where you need a little time to digest, to then get it like, oh, that was actually very good. So I think that's David Lynch. So I think it's only like on a day like this to honor him a little. I think it's very important.
Do you agree that maybe his films were a little bit more about the feelings they evoke as opposed to creating more or less a cohesive traditional narrative? Because I was speaking to Benny before you came on, and I said, I really appreciate David Lynch, as I do a lot of different directors, but I think with him, it's not always about following a storyline in traditional linear sense. It's more about when you walk away and you have that time to digest what you've seen, and you sort of view it more as an art piece as opposed to just a simple story in a sense. I think he was very good at that.
Yes. It's almost like what a painter is doing, but as a filmmaker, you know, where you don't compromise and where you do your thing. I found a good like thing what he said years ago, where he said, look, you need to tell your story your way, basically, and you have to tell the stories they're like in you, you know, like where they have to get out. And I mean, in most of the filmmakers' lives, you cannot afford it. You cannot, you know, that's the thing where a lot of filmmakers have to just shoot what they can, like, you know, like, oh, it's a Hallmark Christmas movie, let's do it. And I think when I bring it on me, like in my career, I did things like this where exactly I think fulfilled what he just said, but I did also 20 other films I just did because I had the opportunity to do them. You know, where you feel like I'm happy to shoot a movie and work with big actors or have a bigger budget, like whatever, in the name of the king and stuff like this. And that makes you a better filmmaker, I think, brings some money. And at the same time, it didn't stop me in developing things I want to do. You know, that's the thing. But of course, I think he is a filmmaker similar to a Cronenberg or like Lars von Trier. Like, you know, I would not say Lars von Trier is on his level. You know, I think he made maybe 3 good movies. And then Lynch did more. You know, but he also is a guy who just is doing whatever he wants. And if it fits in something, then it fits. If not, too bad. But he's not like now the new director of Venom 5.
Right.
You know? So
that would be a weird one. I am sure you already have a vision for that.
I think it could save Venom if Lars von Trier would direct a Venom movie. Otherwise, I think it's I think it was the last one. So it's I don't think they continued it. But yeah, but it makes you always feeling like this kind of the real icons of movies, the era of the filmmakers is really going down. It's really going to an end, you know, because you don't know people anymore, like who direct stuff. It's mostly unknown in the streaming era for the people that watch films, you know.
That's a good point. I definitely wanted to say, I feel like you're stalking us because we were literally having this conversation before you came on. I said he heard something. So
No,
the first thing no, I know.
I had dinner and I had to let my dogs back out, and then I jumped it. So I didn't hear what you were saying.
Small world, but like yeah, we wanted to take that same approach and kind of give that honorable mention to David Lynch. And I know you've made posts on social media about it as well. And I figured you might appreciate this little shirt I posted about. This is a shirt it's the oldest clothing I have in my life from when I was a teen. My father gave me this shirt. He bought it from a bum in the street that was just selling bootleg shirts, which is great. And had like two of his favorite movies at the time, and one was Shaft, just randomly having
Richard
Shaft on the back.
Yeah.
But then, appropriately enough,
Eraserhead, yeah.
and this was my introduction.
When I watched Eraserhead, I watched it actually on screen in a little. There was one in Leverkusen by Cologne, was one theater who only showed horror. It was like, I mean, also theaters like this doesn't exist anymore, but I watched their Man Eater and the Mother's Day and all that stuff, and they had Eraserhead, so I watched it, and I was so, in a way, on one hand, kind of bored, you know, but on the other hand, kind of totally freaked out. Like, what the fuck? You know, like this kind of like, and it's this kind of, we have to see also the time when it was done. Now you watch videos like people with two heads and all this shit on Instagram and everywhere, where people post videos of the total freaks of our society, where you get freaked out, and it's real, you know, like, but at that time, without internet, there was something, let's say it this way.
Definitely ahead of its time, for sure. And it was like Brian said, it's one of those movies that make you think more about it after than when you're watching it. You're more confused and trying to piece it, but you have to like sit and digest it. And especially me seeing that as a kid, I didn't know what to think. You know, my dad's like, you got to watch this. You got to watch it. I'm like, it wasn't until I got older. I'm like, okay, I get it now, you know? So it's definitely, he left this a stamp on the industry, like you said. And, you know, there's just certain styles that when you have that fortunate scenario of, you know, you can kind of make whatever you want, you know, by all means. I mean, you are proof of that writing. You do whatever the hell you want, which is great because, you know, you get what you want out of your picture in the end, and you're not conforming to someone else's, you know, agenda, essentially.
No, I mean, this for me is, I couldn't do it, right? I could not bend over or something. I remember David Lynch, there was a year ago, whatever was in the press, that you remember the little video clip what came out where he flipped out on set on somebody. I don't know what he was shooting, if he was shooting something, but I felt the whole time, how can people work with David Lynch and think they can tell him what to shoot?
Are you going to try to do a close-up on Candy still? Or do you... If you want to cut the time down,
what is this with everybody?
No.
What is it? Really?
Me.
Why? I'm serious. Fucking A, man. It drives me nuts. Who gives a fucking shit how long a scene is?
You know, there was a situation like this, and I don't know what production it was, but it was this kind of way. I felt like, okay, if you hire David Lynch or you give him money to make a movie, you just have to do his stuff, right? So you cannot just say, you know, you should play that scene a little faster. You know, like, I mean, it's insane. It's really like, I felt like, I think it posted something came on a defense of David Lynch. It's like this kind of, there are real artists in the business and they're not delivering what you tell them to deliver. So, and it's maybe the reason they have so much trouble to shoot movies and to finance movies, of course, right? So it's like, because they will not do what Netflix wants, you know, stuff like this. But I think it's important that this kind of people exist and that they are not like forgotten and not like, if they do something, just let them do whatever they want, what it is, you know. So, and it's a shame that the streamers now, I think, moved completely away from that. You know, the streamers, especially Netflix, came in the beginning as a genre kind of driven B-movie, exploitation, all this kind of stuff where you felt, okay, Netflix coming up instead of Blockbuster Video. And then Blockbuster Video went bankrupt, and then Netflix changed into ABC, NBC, and HBO. You know, like, it's like they don't do this anymore. The rogue stuff, the crazy stuff. Now they want live sports and football. And it's too bad because I hope that Netflix is a home, or would be a home for filmmakers, you know, and that's unfortunately it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I think a lot of what those more like film auteurs, directors who are creating, you know, different sorts of, like you said, genre breaking films that are aligned a lot more with the traditional artistic venture. It's stuff like Shudder. I know they're big into that. Bloody Disgusting. A lot of those are horror examples, but I think that they're less. It's less incumbent upon them to conform to the industry standard, as it were. They're not out there trying to make the next Marvel blockbuster. They're very content in their lane, and they do that extremely well. And I would argue that you're the same way, in that you've found a niche and it's working, and it works great, and you seem comfortable with it. I wanted to ask you, because you sort of, you know, touched on this, between the difference of creating something that's completely original, you know, your own vision, your own story. What's more difficult or more enjoyable doing? Creating something that's your own original idea, or having to adapt an existing story, say from a video game or some other source where there's already pre-existing story?
No, it's my own stuff. But it's also, when you see, besides Postal, I didn't wrote any video game based movie because I just couldn't do it. You know, I could like have kind of the input to the story, but I could not write like 100 pages based on Alone in the Dark. And I can do this basically only when I'm, you know, when something burns in me and I want to make a film about it, then I get creative and can sit down and write stuff. And that was with Rampage or Assault on Wall Street. That was like this kind of stories I wanted to tell, or I see something what worldwide what is happening, and I want to tell my idea of what's wrong, or I tell my idea of look, I don't have the opinion of all that filmmakers who did something about this, you know, and yeah, and that's the thing. And then I'm really burning for it, because mostly what I think about political stuff or whatever is a little edgier, as most of the people I know. And so, and I think it's very important to have this kind of radical voice also in you know, in a discussion, and film is part of a discussion. You know, I mean, I see it right now. Look, when you see my film Run, what I shot with Amanda Plummer and James Russo and everything about the boat migration into Europe, there was all the big festivals passed on the film, even if they said they all liked it. And I think they only passed because they want to be so political correct that they don't want to show a film what shows this mass migration as lose-lose situation. That it's also it's not good for the migrants, but it's also not good for the population, you know, because you cannot handle it. You basically lose your business. Nobody wants to go, or like in an Italian beach town or Spanish beach town. We were over Christmas in Spain at the Canary Islands. I have to let my dog in. Wait one second.
No problem. When I was watching First Shift last night, that's what I enjoyed about it, is that it doesn't have like a really, you know, one way or the other political leaning. It has, you know, it mixes both, and it really explores very subtly, you know, different ideals, ideas about gender, ideas about socioeconomic class. I really liked it. I was like, okay, there needs to be more of this. Regardless of what the viewer's leaning is, you shouldn't always have to say that you have to, you know, appeal to them. Sometimes you have to challenge them. So yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah. What kind of dog do you have? I have to ask, what kind of dog do you have?
Dogs. I have a super small one here. That's, wait, I bring him up.
Oh, wow.
Black Spitz, yeah. But he is the barker and the flip out dog. But I have a Bull Mastiff boxer mix. It's the big one. And he's already upstairs in the bed sleep. So, you know.
Go figure.
No barking, no flipping out, but he is always mega hyper and like totally loses his shit. Whoever rings on our doorbell, he's flipping out like completely, and I cannot get it off him. It's completely crazy.
but you love him, and that's what's important.
Yeah. He soon wants to get out. But coming only for a second back to Run, that living in Europe, seeing what's happening, and being like in for example, in Spain, in the Canary Islands over the Christmas week, that was like you had everywhere that red, like boats patrolling, so that the refugee boats could not come to the beach. So they fished them off a kilometer away, 2 kilometers away, to bring them away because they don't want to destroy the tourists, right? So if they have them, as I showed in my film, if you have them reaching the beach, then people would never come again. You know, I'm not at a beach where like you have like 5 refugee boats a day coming in. I get scared. You don't know, are they flipping out or whatever, right? So, and that's the thing. And I think that whole situation is completely absurd. You know, it's kind of sad and it's absurd, and that is what I show in Run. That it's like I have one guy on the boat who turns violent, then, and there will be somebody, like a kid, will be dead, right? And then that I did that on purpose, and that's the reason all that festivals don't want to play the film, because I show that's the price you pay in letting them in. That's happening every day in Europe. You see it in England, you see it in Germany, people stabbing, Christmas market attack in Germany, 6 dead, 200 wounded, you know, from a guy from Saudi Arab who ran amok. So, and I think it is allowed to ask that question, like, do you want to go that risk or not? You know, and that's the thing. And when you have here the left-leaning government in Germany or the Green Party and people like this, they say everybody's welcome, everybody's welcome, everybody's welcome. Same what it was in US under Kamala Harris. 10 million people came in 3 years. It's crazy, you know, but a society cannot handle this. It's just like impossible. You know, you have the housing problem. People have no housing or don't find an apartment. Now you have 10 million people crossing the border. I mean, where they're living then, you know. So, and I think that's the problem, and this kind of there you see where the media industry still stands. You know, I think that's the that they don't want to even show a film like this, who really tackles one of the biggest problems in the world, and has like Amanda Plummer, Barkhad Abdi from Captain Phillips, James Russo, Ulrich Thompson from Das Fest, from Winterberg, people that won Grammys, they won Emmys, they won Golden Globes, you know, and then they don't play that film. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. It's pissing me so off. Berlin just passed on it, like the Berlin Festival. I hope we could do a premiere in Berlin. They passed on it. Sundance passed. Venice passed. South by Southwest passed, you know, and then they show like fucking movies about the guy in Chile who has a bee problem with the neighbor, you know, and you feel like, what the fuck? I mean, you know, so that's kind of pissing me off, that this kind of oppression is there in the industry.
Are you still living in Germany?
Yeah, 2020 we went here from Vancouver, and since then we live here. But we keep like the home in Vancouver too. My son lives there, my older son, and so. But look at Canada. Canada is the same. Canada is like it's horrible how this all developed. I mean, we saw it when we had a restaurant in Gastown in Vancouver, where more and more homeless, more and more drug addicts, more and more robberies. Like our car got broken into 3 times. You know, like this kind of that's happened. That it's escalating up. It's not necessarily migration in Canada. In Canada, it's more drugs. The fentanyl crisis and the drug crisis, and they have no rehab. Was also a thing where Canada made a major mistake. They thought that they bring people to the hospital when they overdose, and then they're letting them back on the street. And they thought the solution is to give them free drugs. so free injection sites, and then methadone and stuff like this. And they were not aware, like drug addicts take the methadone and then they go on the street and take the fentanyl. I mean, it's not like in any way like where you have this kind of feeling there is a control to it, or doctors who would say, look, we give you this now you stay here for a few days, and we get, no, it's like, here's this, and then they go back out on the street where the next idiot stands like, oh, fentanyl, $2. It's very cheap too, this kind of new drugs, crack and so on, and it's destroying the whole society. It's like, and I think I'm not for any political party, to be honest, but the reality is, if they don't find middle ground, I think these extremes are totally wrong. It's totally wrong to say, oh, all homeless are great and give them drugs and whatever, and they have all the freedom they want, they can shit on the sidewalk. And on the other side, you say they're all El Salvadorian gangsters and need to get thrown out of the country. Both is totally wrong. Both is wrong, but the truth of how to handle these problems is in the middle. And the same in Europe. You cannot, we need migration, and all of Europe is full of migration. All of the US is full of migration. And you need that also for the workforce and so on. We have an overaging population, as Elon Musk always says, we need more people, right? So, okay. But then you also have to control what they're doing. And you cannot let them completely alone, running around in the wilderness. And, you have to have a program, you have to learn the language. You have to, you have to get trained to be the workforce. And if people, and that is in Europe the bigger problem, getting very Islamistic radicals, and be we have in Berlin nonstop, I have to throw my dog out now, but now he's barking. So, but we have in Berlin nonstop, 10,000 people on the streets in some sections of Berlin, saying, kill all Jews, wipe out Israel, whatever. They do this, and nobody is doing anything about it. And that is where I then, on this point, I'm more than right wing, like the AfD in Germany, who would say, all out, all arrested, all out of Germany, boom. And that is what I think has to happen. I have a lot of Jewish friends in Berlin. They're not going around in any way that people can see they're Jewish. It's very risky, and it's not because of skinheads, it's because of Islamistic people. They are the threat for the Jews. The Jewish main newspaper in Germany wrote an article ago and said, vote for AfD. The AfD gets pictured in the normal media here as Nazis, right? They're all Nazis, whatever. But the Jewish people say, no, we want them in government because they are not anti-Semitic at all. You have 5% in the AfD party who are actually Nazis. 95% who really have the control over the party are zero Nazis. They are pro-Israel, pro-Jews, and they're only totally against Islamistic people. So, and the Jews say, look, we feel better if they would rule, and this stuff doesn't happen, So, and that's the thing. It's it's so much bullshit, and this kind of, let's say, press maneuvers where you have, similar to the US, you had it too, right? I mean, who supported Trump from the normal mass media? Fox News. You can basically say every other media conglomerate was for Harris and pushed her and endorsed her, whatever. And in Germany, it's similar. The government right now, they're getting the support from 95% of the media. And then if Elon Musk did that interview with the boss from the anti-Euro party, all of Germany flipped completely out and said, how's that allowed? He's interfering with our elections, right? But what they are doing every single day, they're interfering with the elections in pumping out how bad the AfD is. So it's like they are doing the same propaganda, but 24/7, 95 of the German media is basically green and social democrats, and that's the thing. It's like, and to be honest, I always voted social democrats. I never voted for a radical party ever, but now I'm thinking about voting for the AfD because, we have elections in 4 weeks, because the existing government is not solving one problem. Like, it's just like, it doesn't happen. They always say, look, too bad, people stabbed, people dead, whatever, robberies up, crime up like crazy. And they're like, yeah, we really have to do something against it. Okay, but you were in the government like the whole time. So, we're not seeing that you move people out of the country. They always find a reason not to, so, and that's the thing where I think, I personally have it, because it's like, I'm very mad with them, and I'm also very mad with them in regards of the Ukraine war. That now Trump, the big enemy, like everybody in Europe hates Trump, right? So the big enemy, Trump, but indirectly now they all hope that Trump finished that war. Because they can blame him to be a bad negotiator. They will say, like, if Trump finishes that war, all of Europe will say that's the worst deal for the Ukraine ever. But indirectly they all hope that it's over. So, and it's so two-faced and so bullshit, like, instead of, as Europe, we are here where the Ukraine is. Why we don't solve that? Why we never made in 3 years of war, no ever settlement conference or whatever happened where the Russians were. They met with 80 countries, but without the Russians. So what's the point? The Russians are the attackers. They invaded Ukraine. So if you don't solve it with them and the Ukraine, what's the point to talk? France and Spain and Germany and England, we're all talking, but the Russians are not even at the conference. How you ever want to solve a war? It's total bullshit. And that's the thing also. But that's the second thing what drives me away from these parties, where I feel like these guys are just completely useless. They would get on with that war for the next 15 years, like Afghanistan, like an endless war. And it's just bad. It's just bad.
Yeah, you touched on something that's really important. So back to the immigration situation, I think that also parlays into some of these more geopolitical conflicts. I think is important to remember, and I think you said it perfectly, that there is a middle ground, and there has to be a middle ground to a lot of these issues. The problem I know right now facing us in America specifically is this rampant tribalism, where it's expected of you to pick a side, and to pick a side that's very extreme. In the middle is considered the weakest. It's almost as if you're shamed for wanting to compromise on some things. I don't particularly always agree with the other side, but there's got to be a reasonable means to get from point A to point B and still retain what our country is about. So when we say, give us your tired, your poor, huddled masses yearning to breathe free, we still need to abide by that notion that it's still a land worth coming to and contributing to and defending as best we can, while embracing cultural diversity. But also, it can't really just be a free border on either side, because you do want to, there is a vetting process. I've known several people, friends of my family, who have emigrated to the United States and had to go through the naturalization process. And I would probably hedge my bets and say they probably know more about American history than I do, because they had to pass a test. So they can probably rattle off the Gettysburg Address. I probably could not. But yeah, I think that's important. And as far as these other conflicts go, it's almost impossible now. I myself come from a Ukrainian family. We're predominantly Ukrainian, and the whole thing is heartbreaking. And so I just have a vested interest in that, obviously. But the situation in the Middle East, I have no idea anymore. It sickens me, the entire thing. And that's why I think it's good if we have people out there that have the artistic capability to articulate effectively that feeling of loss and that feeling of strife and things like that. I think it's always incumbent upon them to do so. So, your film, you're doing something that in your heart is getting your message out. And I think that is admirable. And wherever that lands, it's always, the responsibility of the viewer to sort of, just like we talked about David Lynch, you're going to get that feeling. It's going to stick with you. A good film is going to make you think, for better or worse, So I think that's important.
But that's the thing. Exactly what you said when you coming back only one more time about the Ukraine is I was the whole time. That's the reason I don't have so many when I do like political podcasts in Germany. Every Sunday I put a video out where I talk about stuff, right? So I never got the right corner people happy with me because from the beginning on, I said, look, Putin attacked the Ukraine. He is the perpetrator. And he could also said, look, I don't want that you're part of the NATO and put like diplomatic pressure on it, economic pressure, whatever. But no, he did a war. And he killed a lot of people and bombed the shit out of a lot of cities. And I said, there's no excuse for it, right? And then the left people hated me, like the people they say, look, we have to support the Ukraine and it has to keep going, because I felt like following up the military, like what's happening is, guys, it's not that Russia can ever lose the war. The main point is basically what means like losing the war means like the Ukrainian troops going into Moscow and Russia has fallen, basically. That will never happen. So, and I was always very skeptical. Like if you push, let's say we give the Ukraine more and more like mid-range weapons and more stuff, right? That you trigger maybe that Putin nukes Kiev. I was scared of this, that he felt like, now they're going on my nerves. Here they're shooting rockets into Moscow. Like, fuck them. That's the thing. I don't picture Putin as a guy who doesn't play. I think he plays hardball like that. He's a fucking maniac, and that's the fear I had, like that it could totally blow up and escalate. And I felt like that was the reason that I said the whole time, you need to sit down and figure it out. And of course, if the Ukraine bites into the apple and gives Putin the territories he conquered already, right? Then it has to be crystal clear that from this point on, they have to get protected by the NATO. Like you have to take, if you give Putin this, what you shouldn't get, he shouldn't retreat. But if he doesn't do it, and he prefers to keep fighting for the next 10 years, then if this is really like what you feel during real negotiations, then I think it has to be, then he has to pay the price for it, that you have to say, look, but from now on, if you go over that border, what we're putting up there, we bomb the shit out of you. We have the Third World War. So that's the message, right? And I'm not sure that Trump will go so far. That's the risk with Trump, that he doesn't really care. When I listen to a lot of people around Trump, like J.D. Vance and all that people, they don't care about the Ukraine, right? They don't care at all. They could say, well, Russia, take it, I give a shit. Like that feeling came across. So, and I'm scared. And that was the reason that the whole time I said, during the Biden administration, you need to figure it out. Like you cannot and I had the feeling Biden dropped the ball too. Like he just gave some more support, but he didn't really did too much. And then I had the feeling like, okay, so now he's sitting it out till Trump comes in. Then Trump, we all know that he can focus only like maximum 2 hours on something. So it means like he will call Zelensky, he will talk to Putin. Putin says, I keep all that territories and Ukraine can never be in the NATO. Right? Then he will tell this to Zelensky and say, look, take it. Then Zelensky will say, look, but if we're not part of the NATO, he can just attack us in 2 years again. He's just like getting more territories in 2 years and more territories in 2 years. That is my fear, that this will happen and that Trump doesn't care, So, and that's the thing. And that is why I'm not like, let's say, I don't have 1 million followers in Germany, because I never say something what everybody likes. It's like I'm not too enthusiastic about Trump. I was not enthusiastic about Biden. I think he is to stay in power, and but I also was not enthusiastic about Harris because I felt she's a total phony. Like, she doesn't stand for anything. She was just smiling in the camera and saying nothing. Beyonce is behind me. Everybody's behind me. Everybody loves me. Yeah, okay, but what are you doing? Like, she never admitted that it was a mistake to let 10 million people cross the border. She never admitted it, and that's horrible.
And I think back to the thing about Biden too. I mean, I had always considered him a diplomat. That was always his wheelhouse. Traditionally, stemming back to his time back in Congress back in the 80s and everything, he was always a diplomat. That was really his big strength. And I think that's a lot of the reason why Obama brought him on as vice president at the time, because it gave him that global reach and it gave that administration the sincerity when dealing with these other superpowers and dealing with these other nations. So for me, I would have liked to see a little bit more. Now, I know you're sort of hamstrung these days because, when you're dealing with specifically Russia, then you're dealing with NATO by default. And when you have a non-NATO European country or, Eastern European country, then it's, oh my gosh, it's such a nightmare. And I am absolutely certain that as much as I think I know about that situation, there is a lot I don't know. And it's probably a lot that I could learn. So it's a total conundrum. I don't know the answer. I don't know that anybody knows the answer. It would be nice to see more diplomacy and a lot less death. I think that it's 2025. I can't even believe we're fighting these same land wars and everything in these different areas of the globe. It's very saddening. But we're dealing with a lot of wars internally, whether we want to face that reality or not. I think right now in America, and like you said, to your point, over in Europe, there's sort of a social war going on that seems to not yet really hit its climax.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with what you said. And it's like, for me, that idea that, like, I mean, if I go now in my car and I drive 11 hours, I'm like in the Ukraine. Like, I'm in the war, and I can go there with my car. And I feel like that's just insane, right? I would not be willing to fight. To be honest, like, I would fly out to Canada if the shit hits the fan, because I'm not dying for a country or for some politics who fuck everything up and we're not able to solve problems. It's just ridiculous that we're going back to the Second World War kind of, you're in the trenches war, but with the way worse situation, because now they attack you with drones, like you're toast basically, right? So it's poor luck if you're not getting like shredded from a drone. So that's the thing where I feel like, what are we doing? And I don't know any politician who went to Putin and met him and said all of this to him, what I just said, like to say, like, what the fuck are you doing? I thought you want to be part of the EU, you want to benefit financially. We had that big gas pipeline to Germany, what then blowed up and all that stuff. So that made him multi-billions a year, and he put everything to shit to take over the Ukraine. The Ukraine will always have a civil war then. I mean, what do you want to do? Like, let's say you take the Ukraine, right? And then you think the people are pro-Putin, then they will be like leaving or fighting in like little terrorist attacks, right? So the Ukrainians will fight for their freedom. As we saw it in Afghanistan. You couldn't stop it, that in the end, they took the country back. So, and it's also like, that's the thing. I don't get what Putin's big, besides his ego, but what is his big benefit out of this? He got sanctioned. He spent now like 15%, 20% of the GDP from Russia for weapons to keep the war going. It's insane. And yes, he makes sure that the elite people in Moscow, when Tucker Carlson was in Moscow, oh, look, the supermarket is full. It's all show, right? But Russia is huge. So, of course, Moscow and St. Petersburg will always be perfect. He's not drafting people from the street in Moscow. He's drafting people from Siberia and even from North Korea now. They go to the war and die. and they're not in the press. So there's no reporter, there's no Tucker Carlson going there like, what is this here? A town where no more young men are because they all died 2 years ago in the Ukraine war. Like, all of this happens. They have hundreds of thousands of dead young people. So, and that's the thing. And that makes me so mad. Like this kind of like one-sided view also from the politicians, that instead of opening a talk, like trying to get some sense in him, but give him at the same time a way out. That's what the West didn't did so far. That the EU didn't did that. They said we unconditional support to Ukraine so they can fight the oppressor, and we don't even discuss with Putin. We never meet him. We never talk to him. Okay, but now I think after 3 years, both sides are tired. Both sides have a problem, and I think it's time to. You cannot make Putin lose completely his face, right? He cannot accept the deal where he gets killed in Russia for. So you have to even it out in a way that Zelensky says, look, I got the maximum out of it, and he cannot get one more kilometer and the war is over. Nobody has to die anymore, and we're getting $100 billion to rebuild the country. Like stuff like this, that Zelensky has this. And then you need Putin say, look, we got the territories. We won the war. We never won a war as the South, right? So whatever. So, but
the problem, the fear, I think the fear that's overarching is that, like you said before, it would have to be incumbent upon NATO to offer unilateral support to Ukraine upon any sort of ratification of a ceasefire. So for Putin, I think that would be like a non-starter. Like if NATO is involved in any regard, I really worry, because he's already. That's the thing. I just don't know what constitutes a real end. It always feels temporary. It always feels like this is just a patch that's going to get us through the next maybe decade or something like that. But there's going to be inevitably a next incursion or another conflict of some sort. So if NATO inclusion is any part of that armistice, as it were, it's probably not going to be as appealing to him. And I think that's sort of like the straw that's going to break the camel's back. Although I'm all for it, I think NATO should, obviously open its doors at this point. I know that Putin doesn't like it, but it's the reality of what it is. When you have these, nuclear countries on your border, that have said outwardly that they would consider a nuclear option, that to me, that's terrifying. Even if it's not occurring within my own country, that scares the living hell out of me. It really does.
And I mean, the only, let's say Putin would say, okay, ceasefire, we're not fighting anymore. We keep this, you keep that. Then Ukraine said, okay, but I need a NATO protection, whatever, right? And Putin says, no way. As you said, like NATO knows there are no troops coming into Ukraine from the NATO. So then you need to bring China in, because China, who stays very neutral to everything right now, I think they have no interest in the Ukraine war. It's not good for their economy. And so you need to tell China, to Putin, okay, good. We vouch that you don't attack the Ukraine anymore. That basically a neutral superpower like China would say, look, you promise you not attack Ukraine anymore, but you also don't want the NATO to support the Ukraine or protect the Ukraine. But you have to understand also the Ukraine cannot live with this, because then the Ukraine every day, you don't know, right? Little bomb here, 10 kilometers moving the troops forward. And then you have this, what you said, you have this stalled, endless war, what keeps flaming up here, keeps flaming up there, right? That problem could China solve if they would be at the table too and would say, look, Putin, we cut all ties with you if you break that peace. Then he's fucked. Then, So that would be something. But also with China, nobody talks and nobody brings China to the table. They said various times they would be interested to be part of the negotiation team, basically, So, that would solve so much. It's this kind of, there is so much stupidity out there. You know, for example, take the tariffs from Trump, 25% tariffs of whatever comes from China. Yeah, but who will pay this? You pay this. You will pay.
We pay it.
Exactly. So you have then 25% inflation based on the tariffs. Like every iPhone gets manufactured, the Nike shoes, whatever. So, and Trump says they all have to manufacture all of this in the US. So, yeah, you want more manufacturing in the US, then everything will get way more expensive also. You know,
We already can't afford anything.
Exactly, you know, and then but right now what Trump is doing there, and when you read the Economist, like this kind of Financial Times, they all hate the terrorist idea, all of them. Like the financial markets hate that because they think, okay, in the very end, it's not China paying them. That is Trump when he talks. China has to pay. It's not the Chinese government shelving over money if the iPhone's getting shipped. It's like Apple will pay it. And then they will make you pay 25% more for the iPhone. That is how it plays out. I mean, and that is what Trump doesn't get. It's like, I don't get that. What's the point? You know?
Most of that, would you agree though that maybe some of that's just window dressing to get elected? Because in one sense, maybe he wasn't ever serious about doing the tariffs thing, but I think when you start to throw words like that around, it almost sounds like we're going to punish someone, because a lot of the American voters, well, on both sides of the aisle, really, you know, whenever it sounds like we're going to toughen up and make something a threat, it's very appealing to whatever extreme side it is. So even just the concept of making somebody out, just like Mexico paying for the border wall, let's say, it sounds like a punishment. And yeah, that's tough, and we're going to do that. But the reality of it isn't logistically sound. So, you know, I'm no fan of Trump, but I want to think that a guy that has, you know, a business degree from you know, the Wharton School of Business would know, like, hey, like the tariff thing is not the way to go. But there are alternatives. If you want to, you know, levy something there that, you know, creates more income for both sides, or it makes the GDP stronger by initiating a certain tax or something, that's a little different. But I just don't know. That is another complex thing. So just as I am no a social expert when it comes to politics, I'm certainly no economist. But I think you're right. I think most people heard tariffs and said, "It doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound appealing."
Yeah, it makes same with Canada. When it comes up to Canada, the US is importing from Canada like wood, gas, oil, you know. So if you make a tariff on it, the customers and all that industry who needs the wood and stuff from Canada will have to pay 25% more. I mean, it's just like completely insane to think that they get it for the same price, and the Canadian oil producers will just charge 25%, like taking it away from their profits. You know, that's the thing. And that is what I don't get. But you're totally right. It's this typical Trump is a perfect catcher of attention. And he is like today, Mel Gibson, Sylvester Stallone, John Ford will be my Hollywood. They will change Hollywood. They make sure they're my Hollywood ambassadors. And you think, okay, but you actually think they can do anything what changes what Ted Sarandos is doing at Netflix? You know, he says they're all three old washed-up actors. We basically don't do anything with them. You know, it's not like Mel Gibson is hot right now. You know, it's like, so it's not like they have any leverage. They can say whatever they want, but the casting will not change. You know, it's this thing. It's like, I'm sure they will say what they said in all the talk shows, Vogue has to die, blah blah blah, but there will be not like a change to Hollywood with this. But Trump knows that this brings him points for the audience. They read it and say, see a fucking Vogue shit in Hollywood, you know, but it has no, like, there will, nothing will happen. Basically, you know, they will not, that they still all are busy with their productions. You know, Stallone with Tulsa King and everything, he will keep doing his shit and will do 2 speeches, and then it will be completely forgotten, this whole thing. And that's the thing where Trump, I think, he brings like in a verbal way, he's a good talker, where the people get a connection to, and they think, who just solved that problem, I don't have to think about it anymore. So the population is just, like, okay, done, Trump has it under control, right? So, and then later it comes out that no, the problems are sometimes deeper and they are way more complex, and that's the thing where I'm totally in the middle. When you have, when Elon Musk goes now in and will efficiency and whatever, I in Germany, because everybody hates him and hates Trump, I defended him the whole time here, right? I said the whole time, wait a second, I think it needs more government efficiency, because the government is zero efficient and has millions of people paid by the taxpayers. I mean, that's a fact, right? So you have and you should question from time to time why we have 40,000 people at the NSA, 50,000 people at the CIA, 80,000 people at the FBI, 80,000 people on Homeland Security. What are they actually doing? You have to have kind of an audit from time to time, like, what the fuck are we doing? Because in Germany too, a lot of government institutions, they're only there because they got the jobs created by politicians. And then one hand washes the other, and they're all like, perfect job. I'm sitting here, make 280 grand a year, and basically, I don't know what I'm doing. So that's the thing. I think they're totally right. But I know that they want to go way further, right? They want omitting things completely. And this is a problem, because it's not Tesla. The government is not like a company or Twitter where you can throw everybody out, then you have less people working on an app. If at the government you omit some stuff and you didn't look deep into it, then people don't get health care. Or, things doesn't happen anymore. And you have no fucking clue. Then the army calls you, by the way, we never got food for the last 2 months here in our, shit like this. That is what it's not done with Elon Musk, who's very busy with all kinds of stuff 24/7. It's not like you cannot have seriously him and the Vivek guy single-handed sit in a room and decide if 500,000 people get fired and 18 government institutions get closed. That would be a massive problem. And I'm sure half of this would get, after 2 or 3 years, would end up in massive lawsuits and a total shit show, where the damage is way bigger as you just let it roll. That's my problem. This kind of populist bullshit. I'm too old and read too many books about all kinds of stuff to know, that's not the way in the end it works, but it was over. The government got blown up too much in the last 20 years. In almost every rich country, like Germany, US, they created more and more jobs. Every asshole, Congress people, for example, I read an article about it. If you're a senator or Congress people, 25 years ago, they had 3 guys working for them. Now they have 30. That's ridiculous. That's all paid by.
I think one of the mixed. Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. I think most people would agree, regardless of their political affiliation, is that, whatever government in whatever country you're talking about, there's always that room for, those inevitable adjustments, and you have to kind of stay ahead of things. I think that bureaucracy is the enemy of progress always. Yeah. I think one of the things also that, there's a bit of a mixed message right now in the United States. Yes, I think most people agree. Yes, certain aspects of the government need to be either retooled or just, refocused. But on one side, you have this initiative that you're saying, okay, yeah, let's eliminate certain jobs that we feel maybe they're excessive, maybe they're redundant, maybe they're just simply, not necessary anymore. And then you create the Space Force. It's it's a, sometimes it feels like a little disingenuous. So I just want to, always make sure you're okay, well, change is not inherently good or bad, but let's see what exactly we're talking about here and how that parlays into a real benefit for everybody. So I'm all about that. That seems the best possible outcome, but yeah, it's hard to get to that point.
I mean, I think we will have a real test between Musk and Trump, because Trump said he will not stop the fuel-driven cars. Where the whole world basically said at 2035 it's all over and we all go electric. And if he actually revokes this and says, I give a shit, that will be a problem for Musk. That will be a problem. I don't know what he's doing then, but I mean, as exciting it is to have Elon Musk running around, but Musk is not used to listen to people. He's not like, he's the only guy in that whole government who's not necessary like a suck up to Trump. He did that at the campaign. He supported him. But for Trump, he can be a problem, because I think if he believes in something, he will just do it. And, and will tell Trump, like, shut the fuck up. I just omitted the FBI. It's better, right? Stuff like this. And then Trump has to stop him, he will have to like dismantle him or even fire him from that job, because he has this kind of radical attitude in him to do. That's the reason he's a great developer of technologies. But I read the whole book about Tesla, how he treats people working there, how he treated people working at Twitter. He gives a shit. He has that result. If he comes to this, he's kind of like this kind of logical, almost autistic thinking guy. If he comes to that conclusion, that government minister or whatever, it has to go, then he will not stop before it's gone. And I don't think he will compromise. Then he will step out and say, fuck you, boy. So, and then on Twitter, Trump is an idiot. Then he will that's the thing. There I see a lot of so excited it sounds for the press. There is a conflict coming up in the next 12 months, especially if he gets it, that things are very slow in politics. When he says these people have to go, that whatever, and then he recognizes that has to go to Congress, it has to go to the Senate, then they're blocking it, then they do filibusters, then are midterm elections after 2 years, where oh fuck, we cannot do this. That is, I think, the hard way he will learn. Like Washington is not Tesla.
Yeah.
So,
well, one of the things I wanted to ask, because you had mentioned about Elon Musk, and we're talking about these new evolving technologies and things like this. One of the hot button issues in the United States, at least right now, I know, and in Hollywood, is the emergence of artificial intelligence when it comes to creating art, creating writing, creating all this. You, as a filmmaker and a writer and a creator, what's your official opinion about this new technology?
Look at Gary Otto, who makes my Uwe Boll thing today. I was only watching it, I was Iron Man, I was everything. So he makes I Gary, stop that shit, and he's totally excited about using the AI. And I think it has, of course, for a producer like me, I will save money in the future on a lot of things. You can do more digital. You can do dubbing the voices. You can basically, I think in 2 years, the dubbing business is totally over, where you dub films, you push the button, and it's all Chinese, Japanese, with the original voices, So this and post-production will get cheaper. What also, of course, on the based on digital shooting, on set got already way less is grip and electricians. You need less, because these cameras, you can shoot in the darkness, basically. You don't need any lights. That was on 35mm. You had all these lights and everything. So, and I think it's another wave. When the digital cameras came and the 35mm material, Kodak stopped doing it, the labs stopped working, Technicolor, all this stuff. This happens now on set. I think scripts will be written partly for TV shows, maybe partly AI. All of this will happen, and it's like the robots in industrial manufacturing and stuff like this. It will cost things. I found it interesting how Zuckerberg on Joe Rogan dicked where he said there were always new jobs for people, and if you don't get a job, you have more time for yourself. like starving to death. You know, like, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, it's easy for him to say this, right? Like, oh, it would be great if I have more time for myself. Yeah, okay, but you have 125 billion bucks. So, I mean, for the population, it's more a threat. You know, that you basically have less and less people needed to do stuff. You know, and it makes, of course, also, it will bring an invasion when it comes to film, an invasion of product. There are already like a lot of trashy movies out where you have this super high-end KI shots. You think like you watch the Blade Runner, and then you have two actors, but then when the stuff they actually shoot is shot on cheap digital cameras and looks like crap with like C or D actors. But as soon as it comes to that wider shots, you have the total, like, you think you watched June, you know. So I saw various screeners like this in the last few months, and I felt like I told the filmmakers, I said, look, you have to at least make it the same light or whatever, right? So I said, like, otherwise it's just that people think they watch totally two different films. The one had nothing to do with it. And it will be interesting to see when it's for real photorealistic. For example, our 3 videos here right now, what we're seeing right now, right, is right now impossible for AI to do in that quality, with this kind of rundown. We have the camera going, this is our real environment, you know, that they couldn't do it. That's the hard part. But if this is solved, then all bets are off. You know, then
they're definitely trying, for sure. You know, they're definitely trying to mimic that that like homegrown heart and the soul, really, of what comes to the people, bringing it to it. Because I mean, it's every other day I'll see an ad on TikTok, and it's like, hey, did you know that I am an AI version of the person that made this page? I mean, like, I know right away, but it's like the average person doesn't. And it's scary because so much fake stuff can be created. You know what I mean? Maliciously. You know, the thing with the fires in California, there was a ton of AI generated, you know, fires of the Hollywood sign on fire, and it wasn't really on fire. You know, so there's good aspects of what's coming, and there's, you know, the people that are going to ruin it for everybody else. But like you said, it's definitely an evolution of time and technology, and some things are not going to learn with the change. You know, like you said, when labs with photography and all that stuff started closing with the AI, you know, people are going to adapt. You know, like, I have to use it for my day job, but as an artist, as a voice actor and things like that, I do worry about, you know, not having opportunities, because on the other side, it's like, hey, I can just do this without you. I can get 10 lines from you, and then I can just, you know, machine learn and have an entire script read all my dialogue in your voice. And that's what people are doing. So like, it's very diabolical for the artists, but again, it's a necessary part of the technology that, you know, we evolve as technopaths in the world. And, you know, I'm hoping that the right people use it for the right reasons. And Uwe, I hope you do the same, and don't forget about us little people.
I love that word, technopath. I'd never heard that before. I'm going to borrow that.
So like the film, the Dark Knight film, what I'm shooting now, right? From next week on,
what a segue! What a segue! That I'm itching to know. Please.
Yeah, but there is a scene, for example, where I had the AI guy. I told him, like, look, I basically need a shot where Armie Hammer, like my main guy, like, is basically going on another lane, and the car flips completely, like, because it's so quick that he looks only in his back mirror, and you see the other car like driving into a tree or flipping over, like completely losing control. And I felt like, let's try, before we actually shoot the film, can they do this in AI, right? And I got a lot of different results, and it didn't look real. It looked half real. It looked like 80% real, but I felt like, if you make a film, it's not, I'm not doing, of course, Batman, right? It's just the title, The Dark Knight, but he's kind of a vigilante. He's kind of a guy who goes and the film will be like really harsh, R-rated, very hard, and it's this kind of everything has to look like it happens, right? So, and if you have a shot like this, I felt I destroyed the whole film. So now I basically hired a stunt team, and they will fucking crash the car, So, and it's of course expensive. That's the problem. But I felt I cannot do this because that's this kind of, it's not there, And I had another project where I tried this too. I sold a film. I was only involved as one of the financiers. Backcountry. I don't know if you know that film. It was a bear. You can watch it. It's the same bear like in that DiCaprio movie, And Backcountry is
The Revenant.
Missy Pellegrim, and basically campers getting attacked by a bear. It's very good. It's very hard, very brutal, and they did it with a real bear, and they had an animatronic head, and animatronic claws, and that's a great movie, and it did very well. So it did very good money, and I felt like I don't see a lot of these bear movies. Cocaine Bear was there, right? But
good movie.
Yeah, they always kind of work. So I felt, okay, the pain in the ass is the bear, right? To shoot with a real bear is a total pain in the ass, and it's not easy, and it's very dangerous too. So, and I felt, I gave it the AI guy, I said, look, try to make a bear, just fictional. A bear attacks a person in the forest. Full on AI, right? And also there, it's not there, right? It's not like, because then you're more like in this fantasy world, like they showed me stuff, also CGI house in LA. They do digital effects and use AI, but they use also real digital effects. But even there, the bear doesn't look exactly like it's real. And I felt like you can do this if you shoot like 300 or Gladiator, then maybe you can do it. But if you do a film where you have campers going right now in Oregon in the forest getting attacked by a bear, and you have these shots, it's over. Like people would say, what the fuck is that? Then you're in the asylum world of asylum films and stuff like this, where it's all bullshit, But if you want to do it real, you need the bear and you need the animatronics again. It's sad, it's maybe now I'm waiting 2 more years before I attack this film, because I feel like maybe in 2 years it's all easy. But that's the thing. So the top notch is still not there.
Well, it's like in Alien Romulus, which was, a big Hollywood blockbuster movie, which I loved Alien. I love the Alien movies. But when anybody thinks back to that movie, they always think of one thing: how bad that computer-generated version of Ian Holm looked.
Yes.
And I didn't think it was that bad, but I also didn't think it was that good. But people dwell on it. Like that one misuse, that one less than perfect depiction visually of that character, a lot of people just focused in on that and said, oh, it killed the movie for them. And that's sad, because I thought the movie was great. But even these super high budget movies, they're still not quite to the point where they're getting it right. And on a side note to that, so Benny and I, we're really avid video gamers, but we also love movies. So that's why we love your work, because it blends both things.
The best person for us to chat with.
you talk about that photo realism being achieved. Now we're looking at like maybe the next generation of hardware being capable somewhat of getting pretty close, because I remember growing up, we always used to say someday video games are going to look like real life. And it's like we're living that. We're seeing that, era of time now where technology is catching up to the point where it can get pretty freaking close. So
Secret Level is a perfect example. I don't know if you've seen it.
Very good. Yeah.
Amazon show Secret Level. I watch it, I have to double take on certain aspects, but then some are just obvious. Like you get that disconnect. It's like, all right, I can tell that that's computer generated. And, I think to your point, when it comes to making a movie and having it all be cohesive, I think that's really the goal. Is it has to be part of the same vision. And when you start bringing in these other inspirations, human made or not, because we can't forget about the Superman mustache. Okay. That wasn't AI. That was human error with computers. So, there are room for mistakes.
But go back to Aliens, like the first one and stuff, right? They were all real. gore
Practical.
effects with
Amazing.
prosthetics and all that stuff. You know, the belly gets up. So, and it totally worked. And I think in one point, real effects still work very good with stuff like this, especially with wounds and bloods and stuff and this, because it's done in that environment. You don't have an like a kind of a, if you put a CGI monster in a film, the lighting is a little different. The room, how they grab the room, how they move forward, it's different, right? And then you of course, you have films like Terminator 2 where that worked, but that was also like the top of the notch at that point, what was ever done before. And, you know, and there it totally worked in Terminator 2. And that's not easy, but in a way, when you have a real blood effect and you shoot a head off somebody and you do it for real and it worked out good with the angles and the shutter of the camera, whatever, you just saved 40 grand, you know, to make this. Yeah, so
I have to go back to your movie again, First Shift, because again, I just recently watched it. So there's a scene, I don't want no spoilers or anything like that, but I just want to bring up, there's a scene in there where there's a man who's disfiguring himself with a meat cleaver, right? Yeah. And it's brilliant because you know when you're watching it, if it was CGI or something and they faked the blood effect like that, it would be more obvious, but you know that it's being done with practical effects. Yes. So your level of suspending disbelief is amplified because you're like, that's actually happening. Whatever at least I think so. That wasn't CGI, correct? Like you did that. That's a makeup effect, correct? Yeah. And it looks really good. And you're sitting there and you're cringing. You subconsciously know that something looks good and believable when you can't control your own reaction to it. So when I'm watching it, I'm sitting here going, ooh, that's bad, you know? So, but if it's CGI, you're kind of like, okay, yeah, that's pretty bad too. But yeah, I thought that was really good. I think it's a good choice. I would always go for practical effects over digital.
When we shot the film, that was on the peak of the Alec Baldwin, where the camera woman got shot, and nobody
on the set of Rust.
Nobody in New York wanted that we shoot blanks and that we do script, right? And I told everybody we do blanks and we do scripts, and that it's done a million times and it's safe. You know, I said we have no real ammunition on set, and you know that's the thing. And you see it in the film when the mafia guy's getting shot on the roof or whatever, right? It's all real scripts and guns and that we're shooting, because the actors react different if it makes boom, if something happens. And if you have only electro guns and like plop, 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 you know, it's all bullshit. And that's the thing. I'm a big fan of doing things for real. And you can make them safe, and real armorers they know what they're doing. I mean, they had like a 21 years old girl there on set who got the permit from her father, basically, you know. So, but I was very mad with the crew because I said, look, it's the typical thing. It's like one accident happens like this, and now you question the whole thing. From now on, it's all CGI. You want to force the producers to spend more money because it's way more expensive, but B, it will never work. The acting sucks then, and it doesn't look so good. So many films where you have that splatter CGI blood flying around, that's just horrible, you know. And I think in like films where you don't go for realistic approaches, then it doesn't matter. But if you do it like in the Equalizer, it matters. You know, because you want to watch something, what happens, and then you have their blood flying around, and you think like, what the fuck is that? It's not, that was fake. And with this, as a film fan, I have a problem. I watch then films like this and say like, what are they doing? You know, right. So I don't like that, and that's the same with stunts. Like to do practical stunts, I'm sure this car flip will look good. These guys do nothing else. They're specialists in it. Nothing will happen. You know, so, right. And they make money. They still have a business. If it's so easy now, you push a button, car flipping over, they're all done. Like they can close the company, and that is also not so good.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I have 5 more minutes, then I have to.
I was gonna say I actually have to go back to work too, but if you don't mind,
yeah.
Armie Hammer, Uwe Boll, stirring up social media. Everybody is like, "What the hell is going on?" The Dark Knight. Why choosing that name? I mean, I feel like I might know why. Especially we just talked a little bit about it, but to hear from you, why the name? Obviously, clearly matching kind of that similar vein. And me having that knowledge of how you feel about superhero movies, I thought it was a very interesting project for you, and I just love to hear your take on why we went that way, and what made you bring in Armie Hammer to the star role.
So basically, I wrote this thing. I had it in my blood boiling the whole time to go basically more the rampage direction again, basically, right? So I did a lot of Vigilante films, a lot of this kind of things, and I had that idea. I wrote it down. I saw Armie Hammer and I didn't have it in my mind at all to play the lead, to be honest. So and then I saw him at Bill Maher at the Club Random podcast from Bill Maher from HBO, and I listened to the whole thing, and I didn't really follow it up so much what he did and with the girls, and then I know only he got canceled and never worked again. And then I listened to him, and he came across very, let's say, open about it, and also this kind of he's ready to move forward. He's not like 80, so he and he said look, I got canceled, I lost the agent management, whatever, nobody gave me a job, but there was also no lawsuit, no prosecution. I mean, nothing really happened to him. And when he talked about he had this affairs, he had affairs on his wife, he took drugs, he was an alcoholic, and his life went to similar a little to Johnny Depp, right? When you get too famous and then you think you can abuse women and you're an asshole to everybody. And so he had various girlfriends parallel. They were like doing bondage and S&M and all that stuff. And he liked it. And then they, I think, found out that he has various girls parallel, and they got jealous. And then the whole campaign started. He choked me. And he said in that podcast, yes, I choked her, but we had a password, and it was like bondage.
Consent.
And it's the thing. It's not like he choked me like Harvey Weinstein choked me. It was a totally different thing. And also, I mean, Armie Hammer, he looks like a supermodel, right? So I don't think that he had to force somebody to sleep with him. I think they were lining up to sleep with him. There was all stuff, and he came across like, he wants to work now. He wants to make films again. So that's the reason I contacted him, because I felt he could totally fit to the part, because my main person is a guy who is in a way stranded in an Eastern European city because his father died and he inherited the business there. And he is very bored. I mean, you're the first guys. It's the first thing that I make it public a little about the story, right? But he's kind of bored with his life. So he starts playing with people. And I think he could connect to it in a way, because in a way he did something similar, right? So, and but then he recognized that he's not fulfilled. So he turns into like a justice warrior. It fulfills him more. He watches in the TV, oh, there are rapists, they raped a girl, but they got no prison term. So then that's the end of the rapist. Like stuff like this. So it's kind of really like Vigilante. And people will say, how can you do this over whatever? But I think it's since Charles Bronson death wish, you have this kind of, sometimes you should take the law in your own hands. But he's not like Bill Williamson in Rampage, who was a really nihilistic, cynical gangster in a way, right? I mean, he did it first for the money, and he is more like, in a way, driven by something. And I was interesting. I had one talk to like a Hollywood buyer, like a big buyer, and he said, I think he comes to negative across. Right. And I said, no, the thing is, I'm not doing John Wick or The Equalizer. You know, I'm not doing something where you feel, oh, he's never wrong. He's always right. Only the bad guys getting killed. It will be more messy, right? So it will be more like, yeah, you do also collateral damage sometimes. It hits the wrong people and stuff like this. And I think that's important to make an interesting film. To have a little more like a twisted character where sometimes you don't know, is he doing it really to help people, or is he doing it because he thinks that's the coolest thing ever and I just do it, I have so much money, I give a shit, you know? So and I think that's the movie I wanted to tell, and I'm very happy that he said he likes that too, and he loves that it's not like a one-dimensional character, and we just go for it. We have there's a lot of action in the film, and it will be kick-ass, you know, but it will be all kind of practical now, right? So we do all the shootouts and all the scripts, the stunt guys. So I'm very excited about it, and we will see, you know. And I mean, I had also a response from Hollywood like, you will never sell that film, nobody will show it, you know. And I felt this approach has to end. That's where the Stallone crew comes in, basically. But you have to say, look, you cannot just cancel somebody for this. What is what he did? You know, he's not Puff Daddy or R. Kelly or Weinstein or something. He's like, he was an asshole. He didn't took drugs or alcohol for over 2.5 years, and he's like under 40. I mean, sorry, but I mean, what the fuck? You know, I mean, at one point you have to say, I'm then the front runner to bring him back. And, you know, and people should think like he was a big actor. He's a good actor. And they should basically say, good that he's back and makes films. And not like, oh, sorry, but we cannot do it. We cannot do it. We cannot do it. That would be cheap. And that has to change. You know, I think that's the thing where I feel this kind of, this overreacting in canceling people is insane. You know, I think it's just insane. And you feel also like, look at the Blake Lively, the other guy, I don't know what the
Ryan Reynolds.
Ryan Reynolds. Yeah.
No, Ryan Reynolds, no, but the other guy who they cancel each other now.
Yeah.
I don't know the name, but think about it. What are they doing to each other?
Yeah.
You know, that it's they are, both sides indirectly are driven by this revenge. I get that person canceled.
Yeah.
You know, for what? They did a hit together. It was I cannot watch films like this, but it was a hit, right? It was a big blockbuster. It made way more money.
You don't like Wolverine and Deadpool? Come on, Uwe.
No, Ryan Reynolds I watch. I talk about the film she did with that guy.
Right.
You know, it ends with us, I think.
Yeah,
right. I just watch stuff like this. But the thing is, I actually loved Wolverine and Deadpool. But it was so media critic of the studio system and everything. I loved that it was so on the nose, a satire on the film industry.
Everything,
you know?
Yeah. And he was allowed to do that.
No, I love that. You know, where he said like Chris Evans is too expensive, we have to kill him now. So, and then, you know, but this specific, like this situation is, I think it would be completely impossible 25 years ago that would happen.
Right.
People would say,
I mean, the last one we really remember, if you remember, was Robert Downey, and he had an amazing comeback story after all he went through as an alcoholic and an abuser as well. You know, obviously, I don't know Armie to compare, but you know,
but he was in jail. Armie Hammer, not.
Right.
And he was not even accused. So that's also a thing. And Robert Downey Jr. was let back in, you know, and it was totally okay that he was back in. And that's the thing, you know, it's this kind of when Brett Ratner now makes I'm not a Brett Ratner fan, but he makes that Melania docu for Amazon, right? So Brett Ratner was out of the business for 7 years or 8 years because he also was accused of abusing women. I don't know what he was all accused of. But I think also that went way over the top. You know, only because somebody is a womanizer or an asshole or a macho or whatever, right? You cannot say he can never work again because somebody says something about you or Twitter something about you and everybody jumps on. It has to be true. It's over. That guy will never work again. That's a little too much. You know, that's a little too much. And that's, I think we have to find there really a balance. Like if somebody is a criminal, he should be in jail. You know, and if somebody is like a criminal in the public opinion, but nobody could ever prove anything, then it's still a decision, you know, like, but you cannot like block the whole world away from people like this. Say, if you work with Brett Ratner, you're canceled. Like we cancel you or something.
Guilty by association, for sure.
Well, I think it shows you how different it shows you how different 1997 was than 2025 because, you know, I remember there was another director who made a Vigilante movie back then where the director was considered sort of this abrasive, sort of difficult to work with, big personality guy coming out to make his first movie, which was Troy Duffy, and he got us Boondock Saints, which is one of the all-time classic Vigilante movies. And you know, I worry that if it was the same situation now, we would maybe be a little too enamored with his personality type and not enough to give his art a chance. So I blame social media for this in a way, but I really do try to divorce myself mostly from who's creating it. Unless if I really like them, then cool. If there's somebody that's questionable, I'm like, okay, got to disassociate. Like, it's like how people would like see like a Woody Allen movie and you can't say that his movies aren't good, but you may look at him and say he's a questionable figure, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't maybe watch his movies. Like we have to walk that line as a society, say, hey, where's your level of tolerance? You know, you have to kind of like, I guess, recalibrate our expectations in a way.
And you cannot take the credits away. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
Somebody was 80 or Woody Allen is maybe over 80. Now I think it's slowly time, really similar to Roman Polanski, who was a rapist, right? To say, okay, you know what? It's enough, right? So you had your career. I still would watch a Woody Allen film, right? I still would watch whatever. Like he did great films. I laughed my ass off on him. He was a great satirical director and he had timing and everything. So I would not take any credit away from Roman Polanski or Woody Allen as filmmakers, right? But then you would have to say, if the accusations amalgamating or even in evidence with like Roman Polanski, then you have to say, look, I personally had a problem to work with him. You know, and you know, but I would also, after watching the whole Johnny Depp stuff, for example, with Amber Heard, where they both, similar to now with the Blake Lively, they destroying each other, and in the lawsuit they destroyed each other. But I felt like I would have a problem accepting a guy like Johnny Depp, how he behaved, working with him. I would have a problem with it. You know, I'm not like. I think all the actors liked working with me. A lot of actors worked various times with me, and but I'm all about business, like making a film, right? And if somebody's completely drunk in the fucking trunk of his car and pees on set, I would tell him like, basically, I mean, you cannot fire a star like this, but I would like crystal clear intervene and would tell him like, you're fucking paid here. You do your job, and that's absolutely insane. It's not okay, and and then I would never work with him again, right? I would like say no thanks if I would go through an experience like this. Would never do it again, and I would like let him feel that I'm not kissing his ass in the process, and you know, I would say like, look, you're a fucking idiot. Like, why you do this? So like ridiculous, you know. So. That's, I mean, I understand if you have a guy like Johnny Depp and the whole film hangs on him and he let himself so go that you go totally over budget and that's like the worst thing what can happen, you know. But that would be the reason that I would not ask Johnny Depp to play the Dark Knight. You know, the reason I asked Armie Hammer was that he was like really on in that podcast. And I looked the podcast from him. He's making a podcast where he talked to his mother about everything, what happened. Yep. And I have the feeling he's ready to roll, like ready to go. And there will be no attitude to it, right? So, and that is what made me ask him. If I would have the feeling he still takes drugs or he's still an alcoholic or whatever, I would totally never made the call and would try a totally different actor. But I think he's really reformed, and then I think he really deserves a shot, you know. Yeah,
I think this is his redemption arc, and I think this could be a big thing for you too. I do think, you know, choosing the name, the title you have, I think is very clever, and I feel like I know the intent in hindsight, because it's got people talking about it. Let's be honest. But, you know, you are well at what you do, especially vigilante action, you know, gritty movies. So I think that getting the proper attention to it is important. So, you know, make sure that, you know, if you haven't seen his movies, you shouldn't be watching this, because, you know, we've talked before and he's got some great action films that, you know, will definitely speak to the work that you're doing. I look forward to it. I see that you're going to be in Croatia again. So I guess once you did run, you fell in love and chose that location. So are we looking for maybe 2026? Do you feel like you might get this done this year? What do you think?
Yes. And I wanted it that he's in a you know, Eastern Europeans around him, this kind of like alone in a strange city, you know, and then you dig into, and then we have an Interpol guy, will be another US actor coming to track him down. Like they bringing more police people in to find what he's doing, because he disturbs the public situation. You know, law enforcement looks like losers, and so there will be the antidote is the police guy. Yeah, but I agree. Like I last week I saw like people sent me stuff from Indonesia, India, Japan. They all wrote about the film. That didn't happen on First Shift,
right?
You know, so it will get more traction as the Run or First Shift, based on the cast, but also based on the content. You know, that it's just a little more commercial in a way. But First Shift, I hope I can make another part or 2 parts more or something like this. You know, Paramount Plus should wake up, give me some money for it. It was very very successful on Paramount Plus, and they didn't reach out to me. I don't know why. I'm way cheaper as Taylor Sheridan, so they should just give me some money and let me do the second part or something.
We'd love to have you back in the States to give us a reason to come meet up with you, so we can get kicked off set.
Okay. All the
best. Pleasure as always, Uwe. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. This was a pleasure. Thank you so much.